Tonight, before we step into the quiet world of a medieval home, I want to invite your mind to soften. Imagine a gentle calm beginning to settle over you, the kind that feels like a slow exhale. A warmth like a small campfire glow, the kind that helps your eyes grow heavier with each passing moment. As you listen, you might begin to feel a little more relaxed, a little more ready to drift. Let's take this peaceful walk together. Before we move further, may I ask something simple? From which country are you listening tonight? And what time is it over there? If you enjoy calm stories like this, soft, slow, and made to help you rest, you're welcome to click like, subscribe, and leave a short comment. It truly supports this quiet little corner of the internet. Thank you for being here. Now, let's begin our slow step toward the doorway of a modest medieval home. Nothing grand, nothing overwhelming, just a simple place shaped by everyday life. As we approach, notice how the outside world begins to quiet itself. Fewer sounds, fewer distractions. Only the gentle sense that we are moving toward a calmer space, where the rhythm naturally slows. The wooden door ahead of us is slightly uneven, shaped by hands rather than machines. Its surface carries marks from weather, time, and the natural environment Allah has created. When your fingers brush against it, you would feel texture, warmth, and a sense of grounding. This is a threshold not just into a home, but into a slower way of living. Take a deep breath and imagine the feeling of stepping inside. The shift is subtle but comforting. The air feels softer, like a blanket of stillness waiting to settle around you. The space is dim, but not in a way that feels unsettling, more like a quiet evening where shadows rest gently along the walls. As your eyes adjust, the first thing you sense is the absence of modern noise. No hums, no buzzing electronics, no distant engines. Only the natural silence of a place built for shelter and routine. This silence feels steady, grounding, almost like it's inviting your shoulders to loosen just a little more. If you notice your breath slowing, that's completely okay. A soft reminder here, just for your comfort. You don't need to follow every detail closely. Let your mind drift in and out. These stories are meant to hold you gently, not demand your full focus. Sunlight enters through a small opening near the front wall. The beam is narrow but warm, laying across the floor in a faint golden strip. Dust motes float lazily through it, turning slowly like tiny drifting feathers. It creates a natural calm, almost rhythmic, like the soft rise and fall of breathing. This simple light becomes the room's quiet anchor. The floor beneath you is firm, made from packed earth. It feels cool and steady, a grounding surface shaped from the natural world. Some areas are slightly uneven, and a thin layer of straw softens a few corners, making footsteps quieter. Every step feels slow, deliberate, as though the home encourages you to move with more intention. Let your attention relax for a moment. You're safe, you're calm, and this story will unfold gently, like a slow breeze moving through old wooden beams. As we stand inside, notice how the walls around us are sturdy but simple, made from materials gathered from the land, shaped with human effort, and supported by the guidance of Allah who provides strength and capability. Their thickness keeps harsh winds away, allowing the interior to feel protected and quietly insulated from the outside world. Even the air inside carries a delicate character. Depending on the season imagined, you might sense faint warmth from a fire used earlier in the day, or a cooler stillness lingering after sunset. Nothing harsh, nothing sharp, just a subtle environment shaped by natural elements. It encourages a slower heartbeat, a gentler mind. Another soft anchor here. If your thoughts drift away, that's perfectly fine. This story can be a background companion, giving your mind something peaceful to wander through as you get sleepier. To our left, a small woven mat lies near the doorway. Its threads are coarse but warm-toned, brought together by careful hands. It adds a stroke of softness to the otherwise earthy interior, blending practical use with a kind of quiet warmth. Not decoration for show, simply comfort where comfort is needed. Your senses may notice how different this space feels from modern homes. The simplicity, the quiet, the lack of clutter. Everything has a purpose. Everything rests in its place. This creates an openness that helps the mind settle, free from distractions or overwhelming details. Stay with this feeling of calm for a moment. Imagine the faint crackle of a distant ember, the gentle whisper of outside air against wooden shutters, the kind of soft environment that naturally encourages sleepiness. Let it guide your breathing into a slower, more comfortable rhythm. As we continue exploring this medieval home, you might realize that the quiet around you feels deeper than before, almost like stepping into a soft pocket of time, untouched by the rush of the modern world. This stillness can be comforting, helping your thoughts settle like dust drifting slowly toward the floor. If you're feeling even slightly more relaxed than when we began, that's exactly how this story is meant to work. When you're ready, we'll continue the journey in part 2. As we move a little deeper into the room, notice how the temperature feels steady and welcoming. Not too warm, not too cold, but balanced in a way that makes your body naturally loosen. This is the kind of space where time slows down, where the quiet feels almost like it wraps around you, giving you permission to rest without effort. The scent in the air is subtle and familiar, earth from the floor, wood from the beams, and the faint memory of meals cooked earlier in the day. Nothing artificial, nothing sharp, just the natural fragrances that come from simple living. These scents remind us that comfort doesn't always require luxury. Sometimes, it's found in ordinary, grounded things that Allah has created for our benefit. Here's a small, gentle reminder. You don't need to focus intensely on these details. This story is meant to be soft around the edges, giving your mind room to drift wherever it feels most comfortable. You're allowed to relax into the rhythm. A wooden stool rests near the center of the home. Its legs are uneven, shaped by simple tools, and its surface carries marks from years of use. If you were to run your hand over it, you'd feel the texture of the grain, the small dents from daily life. It feels humble, familiar, and purposeful. Nothing here exists without intention. Nearby, a clay pot sits quietly, its surface cool and slightly rough. Its purpose is simple: to hold food, water, or tools that make daily tasks easier. There's a peaceful honesty to objects like these. They don't try to impress. They simply serve the needs of life through the blessing and ease given by Allah. As you stand in this quiet space, imagine the distant faint sound of a calm ember settling in a hearth. Not a roaring fire, just the soft, occasional crackle that blends naturally into silence. Sounds like this make the home feel alive in a gentle way, providing a steady companion to the quiet. Another small anchor here. If your eyes feel heavier, that's completely fine. The purpose of this soft storytelling is to help your body unwind and feel safe enough to rest. Along the wall, you notice simple woven baskets stacked neatly. Each basket has a role, holding grains, small tools, or gathered plants from the surrounding area. They add texture to the room, warm and earthy. They remind us that life here was shaped around routine, not rush. The ceiling beams stretch overhead, each one slightly different from the next, shaped by hand, placed with effort, and supported by the strength Allah provides. The beams aren't perfectly straight, but they feel sturdy and reassuring. Looking up at them gives a sense of shelter, of being protected from the weather outside. As you continue observing the room, your footsteps feel quieter, almost muffled by the soft layers of straw scattered across parts of the floor. This natural padding makes movement feel slow and gentle, as though the home itself encourages you to move with softness, not urgency. Let yourself relax a little deeper now. Imagine the feel of the cool, stable air around you, the stillness of the room, the peacefulness that comes from a life with fewer distractions. This is a place where the mind can easily drift into slower thoughts and softer breaths. The walls around you hold small imperfections, tiny cracks, uneven surfaces, marks from the passage of time. But these imperfections add character, not discomfort. They're reminders that this home was lived in, shaped by real people, and supported by the natural materials Allah provided. These textures help the room feel grounded and authentic. Once again, a gentle reminder: you don't need to visualize every detail perfectly. Let the words drift over you like calm wind across quiet fields. The story is simply here to help ease your mind into rest. Toward the corner of the room, you notice a collection of simple wooden tools. They are arranged neatly, each one positioned for easy reach. Their handles are smooth from long use, shaped by work and routine. These tools represent the rhythm of daily life, slow and steady, without overwhelming noise or urgency. If you listen closely, you might imagine the faint rustling of the wind outside brushing against the wooden shutters. It's a delicate sound, almost like a whisper, reminding you that the world outside continues its gentle movement while this room remains still and calm. As we linger in this final moment inside the medieval home, allow the quiet to settle over you like a soft blanket. Nothing demands your attention here. Nothing rushes you. This place invites you to breathe, to slow down, and to feel the peacefulness of simple living. And as this segment comes to a close, there is no strong ending, no sudden shift, just a slow fading into quiet, letting your mind drift deeper into rest. If you're still awake, we'll continue exploring more of this world soon. If you're already drifting, that's exactly what this story is here to help you do. One of the first things your eyes quietly notice inside this medieval home is the way light behaves. It doesn't flood the room or chase away every shadow. Instead, it slips in gently, like a visitor who prefers to whisper rather than speak. A narrow beam of daylight stretches across the packed earth floor, soft and unhurried, inviting your gaze to slow down and follow its path without any rush at all. The small opening that lets the light in is modest, almost shy. It doesn't try to brighten every corner, only to place a calm stripe of warmth where it can. Around that bright strip, the room fades into soft, muted tones, browns, greys, and gentle shades of shadow. Nothing harsh, nothing glaring, just the natural balance of light and dimness, working together in a way that encourages your thoughts to quiet down. If you imagine yourself standing there, your eyes would slowly adapt to the gentle contrast. The brightest spot is where the sunbeam lands, maybe illuminating a simple pot, a wooden stool, or a folded cloth. Everything else remains in a comfortable half shadow. This kind of light feels kind, not demanding. It doesn't force you to look at anything in particular. It simply offers a peaceful scene and lets your attention wander. You might notice how the dust in the air moves lazily through the beam. Tiny specks drift up and down, almost as if they're floating in slow motion. They catch the light for a moment, then disappear back into the softer parts of the room. Watching them is oddly soothing, like observing tiny stars gliding across their own quiet sky. It's the kind of detail you don't need to focus on, but it's there if your mind wants something soft to follow. A gentle reminder here, you don't have to hold every image clearly in your mind. This isn't a test. It's a calm story meant to give your thoughts something slow and peaceful to rest on, while the rest of you gradually unwinds and grows more comfortable. As the sun moves outside, the beam of light slowly shifts across the room. In the morning, it might reach one corner of the floor. Later in the day, it quietly glides toward the opposite wall. This steady, predictable change marks the passing of time in a simple, natural way. No ticking clocks, no glowing screens, just the soft movement of light that Allah has placed in the sky, gently reminding people of the day's slow progress. Sometimes, the light might fall across a woven basket or a folded blanket, making the colors appear slightly warmer for a short while. For a moment, that part of the room feels like a small stage, then the light moves on and another area takes its turn. Nothing dramatic happens, and yet there is a calm beauty in these quiet shifts. The home feels alive, but in a very gentle, unhurried way. When a cloud passes in front of the sun, the beam softens even more, fading into a dim glow. The room doesn't suddenly become dark, it just grows a little quieter, as if it's taking a slow, deep breath. When the cloud moves away, the beam returns, patient and familiar. These small changes in brightness bring a rhythm to the space, a natural rise and fall that can lull the mind into a slower pace. If you let yourself imagine standing in that beam, you might feel the warmth on your hands or face, contrasted with the cooler air in the shaded parts of the room. This gentle difference creates a kind of balance, warmth where the light lands, coolness in the shadows. It's a reminder that comfort often comes from this balance, from accepting both light and shade as part of the same calm space. You don't need to picture everything perfectly. Even if the images blur, the feeling can remain. A simple, quiet room, touched by soft daylight, shaped by ordinary life, and supported by the natural order that Allah has created. Let that feeling be enough, and let it loosen any tension you might still be holding. Closer to the doorway, the light is a little stronger, but still far from harsh. It gently outlines the rough texture of the wooden frame, tracing the imperfections and small marks left by time and use. In this light, the wood doesn't look broken or worn out. It looks lived in, dependable, and reassuring, like something that has quietly done its job for many years. In the deeper parts of the room, the light fades into a calm twilight, even in the middle of the day. Shapes become softer, edges blur, and objects seem to melt gently into the background. This dimness isn't frightening. It's more like the kind of soft shadow you might feel when closing your eyes halfway. It encourages restfulness, inviting your mind to stop trying so hard to keep track of everything. Every so often, your focus can drift back to that single strip of light on the floor. It might highlight the pattern of straw scattered beneath it, or reveal the faint imprint of footprints from earlier in the day. These little details tell quiet stories of movement and routine, without needing any words. They simply exist as part of the room's gentle memory of daily life. If, at any moment, you feel your thoughts wandering away from this medieval home, that's completely fine. This story is designed to be forgiving. You can drift, return for a moment, and drift again, the way light slips in and out of clouds. The goal isn't to stay perfectly focused, but to feel just a bit more at ease than before. In the late afternoon, the light begins to soften further. Its color shifts slightly, taking on a warmer tone as the sun lowers in the sky by Allah's command. The beam stretches longer, reaching across more of the room, as if giving a gentle farewell before the evening comes. The home responds by becoming more peaceful, preparing slowly for the calm of night. As the light continues to soften, the room gently changes character. The bright strip on the floor becomes thinner, and the colors in the home grow deeper and more muted. The corners feel a little more distant, while the remaining light gathers itself into smaller, quieter pools. The whole space begins to look like a slow, fading painting, calming to the eyes and gentle on a tired mind. Near one wall, a simple clay lamp waits to be used when the daylight becomes too faint. It is not lit yet, but its presence already suggests the next stage of the evening. When the time comes, a small flame will offer just enough glow to see by, without chasing away the natural stillness that has settled over the home. It is a tool, a means given by Allah, helping people move safely through their night. A soft reminder for you, listening now, you do not need to stay fully alert. This quiet description of light and shadow is here to keep your thoughts moving slowly and gently, so they have something calm to follow while you grow more relaxed and comfortable. As the sun lowers further, the light from the opening becomes almost horizontal, slipping across the room in a thin, golden band. It brushes the edges of the furniture, the worn grain of the wood, and the rough texture of the walls. Each surface catches the light for a brief moment, then lets it go again, the way a gentle wave touches the shore and recedes. The brightest part of the room now may be centered around a small working area, perhaps a table or a clear space on the floor. Here, someone might finish a simple task while there is still enough daylight, their hands moving slowly through the last moments of natural light. The rest of the house waits quietly, as if preparing to shift into its evening calm. In the dimmer corners, shapes blend together. A basket, a folded cloth, a hanging tool, all soften into one dark, restful mass. You do not need to know exactly what each object is. The important thing is the feeling they create together, a sense of quiet storage, of things at rest, of a day winding down with no rush and no noise. If your mind begins to wander away from this scene, that is completely all right. You can think of other things, then return when you feel like it. This story is not demanding. It is simply here, like a peaceful background, supporting your journey towards sleep. Outside, the light continues to change by the command of Allah, and the room responds without resistance. The opening that once cast a bright beam now lets in a softer, cooler tone. The strip of light on the floor retreats toward the wall, shrinking slowly. The home grows more uniform in its dimness, but it remains familiar and safe. Eventually, there comes a point where the daylight alone is no longer quite enough. This is when someone might reach for that small clay lamp and prepare it. The simple act of lighting it becomes part of the daily rhythm, repeated so often that it feels natural and calming, rather than dramatic or important. Just one more step in the quiet transition from day to night. The first glow from the lamp is gentle, not sharp. It pushes back the darkness only in a small circle, leaving much of the room still wrapped in shadow. The light is warm and slightly unsteady, moving in tiny waves as the flame flickers. This movement is slow and hypnotic, comforting rather than distracting. The beam from outside and the glow from the lamp overlap for a short time, creating layers of light within the room. One is fading, one is beginning. Together, they make a smooth handover from day to evening, like two voices speaking softly in turn. Nothing abrupt, nothing sudden. Just a calm progression guided by the natural order Allah has set. You might imagine yourself sitting near that small pool of lamplight, while the rest of the home stretches out in gentle darkness. The light reaches your hands and face, but your surroundings stay soft and quiet. In this kind of setting, conversation would naturally become low and slow, or fade away into silence altogether. Another gentle reminder, your role here is simply to listen, or even not listen fully. Let the steady rhythm of this home, its light and shadow, work like a slow lullaby for your thoughts. You are allowed to drift, to lose track, and to come back only if you wish. The lamp highlights only what is necessary: a place to sit, a surface to use, a pathway across the room. Everything else is left to rest in the darkness. This selective glow makes the space feel smaller, more intimate, and even more secure. You only see what you need, and the rest can quietly disappear into the background. Over time, the last traces of daylight outside fade completely, and the opening becomes just a dark shape in the wall. The home now depends on the small flame, and perhaps the faint reflection of its light on nearby surfaces. Yet despite the lack of brightness, the room does not feel empty or lonely. It feels like a nest, tucked in for the night. If you listen with your imagination, you might hear nothing more than the softer sounds: a slight movement of air, a faint creak from the wood as it settles, the tiny shift of the fire inside the lamp. Each sound is isolated and gentle, spaced apart by long stretches of quiet. This gives your mind time to breathe between moments. As the night deepens, the lamp may be dimmed or shielded, allowing even more darkness to flow into the room. This is not frightening darkness, but restful darkness, much like closing your eyes at the end of a long day. The light becomes a whisper instead of a voice, and the home settles into stillness. In this soft, nearly dark space, the memory of daytime light remains as a calm impression, not as something you need to hold on to. The journey from bright morning to quiet night has been gradual, smooth, and gentle. And as the light fades in this medieval home, your own thoughts are invited to soften too, easing slowly towards sleep, without any need for a final, sharp conclusion. The air inside a medieval home didn't feel empty or flat. It carried quiet traces of everyday life. When you first stepped in, you might notice a gentle mix of warmth, earth, and faint smoke, all blended together in a way that felt lived in rather than overwhelming. It was the kind of air that told you people cooked here, worked here, rested here, using the simple means that Allah had provided for them. Near the center of the room, where a small cooking fire might have burned earlier in the day, the air felt slightly warmer. The smoke from that fire didn't roar upward in a straight line like in some grand hearths. It moved slowly, searching for its way out through a small opening in the roof or wall. That meant the room sometimes had a light haze, not thick enough to choke, but enough to remind you that warmth in this house came from real flame and effort. If you stood very still, you might sense how the air layered itself. Higher up, closer to the roof, the air would be warmer and more filled with smoke. Lower down, near where people sat and worked, the air would be cooler and a bit clearer. This quiet layering made the home feel like a soft gradient, from warm and smoky above to calmer and easier to breathe as you moved closer to the floor where daily life took place. In colder seasons, the air inside could feel surprisingly comforting compared to outside. Step in from a biting wind, and even slightly smoky air felt like a relief. The warmth kept close to the center of the room, spreading out slowly and unevenly. It didn't flood the house with heat the way modern systems do, but it gathered in quiet pockets, giving people places to sit and slowly thaw. On warmer days, the home offered a different kind of comfort. The thick walls helped keep the harshest heat outside, by Allah's mercy, so the air indoors felt cooler and calmer than the streets or fields. Small openings might be left slightly ajar to encourage a gentle drift of air through the room. The movement wasn't strong enough to be called a breeze, just a slow, steady exchange between inside and outside. Sometimes, a shift in wind outside would send a thin stream of fresh air sliding across the interior. It might carry the faint smell of soil after rain, or dry dust from a nearby path, or the green hint of plants and trees. These passing scents would briefly mix with the home's own fragrance before fading again, like a soft visitor that came and went without a word. You might also notice how the air carried the memory of recent meals, the quiet echo of bread baked earlier, or a simple stew that had simmered over the fire, leaving behind a mild, savory trace. These scents did not rush at you. They lingered gently in the background, as though the room itself remembered what had been shared there and allowed that memory to hang softly in the air. Another gentle anchor for you. You don't need to concentrate hard. Let this description of warm, smoky, earthy air weave in and out of your thoughts. If your mind drifts to something else, that's completely fine. You can always return to this quiet room whenever you like. The air also carried the subtle presence of materials inside the home. Worn wood giving off a faint, dry scent. Woolen blankets holding on to their own soft, slightly dusty smell. Straw on the floor adding a hint of dried grass. None of these were sharp or perfumed. They were humble fragrances, given by Allah through natural things, blending together into a gentle, ordinary calm. When the fire had burned longer than usual, the air might feel a bit heavier, especially in the higher parts of the room. In those moments, someone might stir the embers, let the flame die down a little, or open a shutter more widely to invite another thin ribbon of fresh air inside. These small adjustments were part of a daily rhythm, a quiet conversation between the people and the air they lived in. At night, when the main cooking was done and only a low, careful glow remained, the air took on a softer character. The stronger smells faded, leaving behind only a light warmth, a faint hint of wood, and the coolness creeping steadily from the walls and floor. Breathing in this nighttime, air felt slower, calmer, as if the house itself were also settling down to rest. You can imagine taking a seat inside this house, feeling the air surround you, never perfectly still, never perfectly pure, but gentle and familiar. Each breath connects you to the fire, the earth, the wood, and the quiet work of the people who live here, all under the care and permission of Allah who sustains every moment. If the details begin to blur together, let them. You are not required to hold on to each one. The important part is the feeling, a room where the air is shaped by simple living, where warmth and coolness, smoke and freshness, all find their place in a slow, peaceful balance. Over time, your attention may drift less to what the air contains and more to how it affects you. It encourages you to slow your breathing, to notice the slight weight of the atmosphere, to feel a quiet heaviness settle in your limbs, the pleasant kind, the kind that comes just before sleep. The air in this medieval home, with all its humble qualities, becomes another soft blanket around you. And as you sit with that feeling, you may find that you don't need any clear ending or conclusion. The air simply continues to move gently, to hold the room together, and to invite your thoughts to grow slower and softer until they are ready to fade into the background of the night. In some moments, the air inside the medieval home might feel almost still, like a held breath. Then, without warning, a faint draft slides along the floor, touching your ankles and reminding you that the world outside is still moving. It is not a sharp gust, just a careful nudge of cooler air finding its way through tiny gaps in wood and stone, by the will of Allah who controls the winds. During rainy days, the air can feel heavier, carrying the scent of damp soil and wet wood. The walls, made from materials taken from the earth, slowly absorb some of that moisture, giving the room a slightly cool and quiet feeling. The smoke from the small fire mixes with this dampness, creating a soft, muted atmosphere that makes voices sound lower and footsteps seem quieter. A gentle reminder for you here: you do not need to stay fully awake in your attention. Let these descriptions of slow, shifting air simply pass by like distant weather. Your mind is free to drift and return whenever it feels comfortable, without any pressure at all. In dry weather, the air feels lighter and dust rises more easily when people move about. Tiny particles lift from the floor or from straw and fabric, then slowly settle again when everyone grows still. The air in such moments carries a faint dryness on the tongue, a reminder of the wider landscape beyond the walls, a land that Allah has spread out with different seasons and climates. At times, the air carries the quiet echo of human activity, a whisper of wool brushing against wool, the soft thump of a wooden lid placed down carefully, even a slow sigh from someone easing into a resting position. These small movements gently stir the air, making it tremble for a moment before it settles back into calm. When several people share the same space, their presence gradually warms the air. Breath by breath, they add a gentle humidity and heat. The room begins to feel more enclosed, but not oppressive, more like a shared cocoon. This closeness can be comforting, a reminder that life in this home is built on connection, cooperation, and the blessings Allah places in family and community. At night, when tasks have ended and most movement has stopped, the air grows very still. The faint smoke from any remaining embers drifts slowly, then hangs in place. The coolness from the walls and floor begins to spread again, balancing the leftover warmth. In this quiet mixture, breathing feels deeper and heavier, as if the body understands that the time for rest has arrived. If your thoughts have begun to lose track of the details, that is perfectly fine. This is not a lesson you need to memorize. It is simply a soft, slow journey through the feeling of an old room, helping your own breathing and heartbeat find a calm rhythm. Sometimes the air changes because of simple adjustments. A shutter is closed to keep out a cold wind, and suddenly the room feels more contained, more secure. Or a shutter is opened to release extra smoke, and cooler air slips inside, replacing the heaviness with a fresher, clearer feeling. Each change is small, but together they shape how the room feels throughout the day. In the early hours before dawn, when the fire has burned very low, the air can feel quite cool on the skin. Noses and fingertips sense the chill first, while the rest of the body stays wrapped in whatever coverings are available. This coolness is not meant to harm. It is part of the natural cycle, a reminder of how much comfort comes from warmth that Allah allows people to create using simple means. The air also carries sound differently depending on its temperature and stillness. In heavy, smoky air, sound seems softer, as if wrapped in a blanket. In cooler, clearer air, they travel a little more sharply, so that even a faint creak or quiet murmur can be heard throughout the room. Either way, the overall impression is of a gentle soundscape, never crowded or aggressive. As you imagine sitting there, perhaps near a small ember's glow, the air around you feels like a quiet companion. It does not rush, it does not demand. It simply surrounds you, holding traces of warmth, smoke, wool, and earth, all under the perfect balance allowed by Allah. Each breath you take feels like part of that slow, steady rhythm. Another soft reminder: you are free to let go of the images now if you wish. The air in this story can stain the background while your body becomes heavier, your eyelids lower, and your thoughts grow quieter. Nothing here requires effort. It is all meant to support your rest. In this medieval home, the air is never perfectly controlled, but it is deeply familiar to the people who live here. They learn its patterns, its habits, its shifts with the seasons. It becomes part of their everyday life, as ordinary and necessary as water or food, a quiet blessing from Allah that they breathe in and out without even thinking. And as our attention slowly drifts away from this room, the air continues its gentle work, rising with warmth, falling with coolness, stirring with every movement, and settling again when all is still. There is no dramatic ending, only a soft fading, like a breath released into the night, inviting you to sink even further into your own calm and restful silence. The floor in a simple medieval home didn't feel polished or perfect. It felt real. When you stepped inside, your feet met packed earth, firm and slightly uneven, shaped by hands and the natural ground that Allah spread out. It was the kind of surface that reminded you were standing on something honest and solid, not separated by layers of modern material. Each step carried a quiet texture, a soft crunch here, a smooth patch there, like walking on a memory of many days already lived. Over time, that earth was pressed again and again by footsteps, tools, and daily tasks. It became compacted, almost like a hard, quiet path running through the middle of the home. On dry days, it felt cool and steady beneath bare feet or simple shoes. On damp days, it might hold a faint hint of moisture, making it a little darker in color and slightly softer, but still strong enough to carry the rhythm of ordinary life. To soften the hardness and keep things more comfortable, people often scattered straw or plant rushes across parts of the floor. These thin layers added a gentle cushion between the earth and their feet. When you walked over them, you might hear a faint rustle or crunch, a light whisper under each step. It was a very small sound, but in a quiet house, it became part of the soft background music of everyday movement. A small reminder for you as you listen: you don't need to imagine every detail sharply. Let the idea of these floors, cool earth, soft straw, gentle sounds, float loosely in your mind. If your thoughts drift away and come back, that's completely fine. This story is here to relax you, not to hold you tightly. In the areas closest to the doorway, the floor sometimes showed more wear. Slight depressions formed where people had stepped in and out countless times, bringing in traces of dust, mud, or dried grass from outside. These marks were like quiet records of the family's routine, formed not by writing, but by repetition. The home remembered its people through the paths their feet created. Toward the center of the room, near the cooking or gathering area, the packed earth could feel smoother. Here, people stood more often, sat, worked, and shifted their weight repeatedly. The constant use polished the surface naturally, making it feel flatter, almost like stone in some spots. It wasn't shiny, but it held a gentle, worn-in quality that made each step feel familiar and expected. Closer to the walls, the floor might rise slightly or become more uneven. These edges collected small bits of straw, dust, and the occasional drop thread or crumb. It was the sort of mess that wasn't troubling, just a natural build-up of living in a place. When someone swept, they would guide all of this slowly back toward the center and out of the way, keeping the walking paths clear and comfortable. If your mind feels like it's slowing down as you picture these quiet floors, you can let it slow even more. The goal isn't sharp focus, it's softness. You're simply walking, in your imagination, across a room that has no urgency and no demands, with each step becoming quieter than the last. In some homes, especially where people had slightly more resources, parts of the floor might be covered with simple wooden planks. These weren't perfectly cut or completely even, but they lifted feet a little further from the dampness of the ground. Walking across them produced a different sound, soft creaks or gentle taps, adding a new layer to the room's gentle soundscape, all by Allah's allowance. Where wood was used, you could feel the difference underfoot right away. The boards felt a bit warmer than bare earth, especially if they had been dried by the fire's heat during the day. Some planks dipped slightly in the middle from long use, shaped by years of footsteps. You might feel your weight settle into these gentle curves, as if the floor itself had learned to welcome every person who crossed it. Even with these variations, there was nothing flashy about the floors. No bright patterns, no shining polish, just surfaces meant to be trusted, walked on, worked on, and sometimes sat upon. They were practical foundations for daily life, part of the simple stability that Allah provided through the earth and the materials it offered to people. Children in the home would have known every little change in the floor without thinking about it. Where the earth dipped near a threshold, where the straw was thickest and softest, where a loose plank might give a tiny bounce under their steps. These small details became part of their mental map of safety and familiarity, guiding their bare feet almost automatically. If the images are fading in and out now, letting them fade is completely okay. The feeling is enough. A firm, quiet floor beneath you, the soft sound of straw or wood under each step, and the sense that you are supported by something simple and steady, by the mercy of Allah who keeps the ground beneath all our feet. In the colder months, the floor might feel extra cool in the mornings. That first step out of a sleeping space could send a small chill through the body, encouraging people to move closer to the warmer parts of the room. Over time, as fires burned and bodies moved, the air warmed and the floor followed, losing some of its early chill and becoming more welcoming again. Sometimes, people might lay thicker piles of straw or cloth in certain areas, turning parts of the floor into slightly softer resting spots. These weren't beds in the modern sense, but they added padding where older joints or tired muscles could find a bit more comfort. Even these simple arrangements were part of the kindness Allah placed in ordinary things, making hard floors easier to bear. As you imagine standing or walking on these medieval floors, you might notice that there is nothing in them that pulls your thoughts upward into stress. They do not demand attention. They simply exist as a quiet base for life, strong enough to hold every step, and gentle enough to become almost invisible once you grow used to them. And in that quiet reliability, your own thoughts are invited to settle, just like dust coming slowly to rest. As the day moves on inside the medieval home, the floor quietly records every activity. Footsteps of different sizes and weights cross the same paths again and again. A heavier step from someone carrying wood. A lighter, quick step from a child. A slow, careful step from an elder. The earth or wood underfoot accepts each one without resistance, holding the rhythm of the household the way a soft drum holds a pattern. Sweeping the floor becomes a regular part of that rhythm. Someone takes a simple broom made from gathered twigs or bundled plants and moves it slowly across the packed earth or wooden boards. The sound is soft and steady, a gentle brushing that gathers straw, dust, and crumbs into small piles. This simple act, done by the permission of Allah who gives strength and ability, keeps the space usable and makes the floor feel cared for. A gentle reminder for you as you listen. You do not need to picture everything clearly. Let these sounds and textures blur together. The soft scrape of a broom, the quiet thud of feet, the faint rustle of straw, all of them can simply drift in the background while your mind rests. After sweeping, the floor feels slightly different underfoot. The main paths are clearer. Loose bits of straw are gathered to where they are needed, perhaps near places of sitting or resting. The act of tidying may not be dramatic, but its result is a subtle comfort. It's easier to walk, easier to sit, and easier to relax when the surface beneath you feels ordered. Children might sometimes sit directly on the floor to play with simple objects, like small stones, carved pieces of wood, or anything their family can spare. Their hands and knees grow used to the feel of packed earth or rough boards. The floor becomes their table, their workspace, their stage. It is both plain and generous, offering space without needing any decoration. In the quieter hours, someone might choose to sit cross-legged on a folded cloth directly on the floor. From that low vantage point, the home feels different. The world narrows to the patterns in the straw, the tiny ridges in the dirt, or the grain of a plank. This closeness to the ground can feel steadying, like leaning into the solid creation that Allah has placed beneath us. Another soft anchor for your thoughts. You don't have to hold onto every image. If all you remember is the sense of a firm, quiet floor beneath you, that alone can be enough to help your body feel more grounded and safe as you prepare for rest. In the evening, the floor reflects the light differently. The faint glow from a small flame or remaining embers touches certain spots and leaves others in darkness. The worn, flattened areas catch the light with a dull softness, while the more uneven sections near the walls disappear into shadow. Walking carefully in such light encourages slower steps and more deliberate movements. At night, when most people have settled down, the floor finally has long stretches of stillness. No more sweeping, no more constant footsteps. The only movement might come from someone shifting in their sleep or quietly rising for a brief task. The earth or wood rests along with the people, sharing in the slow, quiet pause that night brings by Allah's wisdom. If you imagine lying on a simple layer of cloth spread over this floor, your body would feel the firmness beneath you. It might not be as soft as a thick mattress, but it offers a kind of support that keeps you close to the ground, close to the quiet weight of the earth. For many, that closeness becomes familiar and even comforting over time. In colder weather, extra layers might be added between bodies and the floor. More straw, thicker blankets, folded garments. Each added layer softens the feel of the surface just a little more. The difference between 1 and 2 layers is not huge, but in a modest home, every small bit of added comfort becomes meaningful, a blessing from Allah in simple form. During busy moments in the day, the floor might feel almost alive with motion. A pot being set down, a basket dragged slightly, feet shifting as someone kneels or stands. Yet even in those moments, the floor remains steady. It doesn't complain, it doesn't react dramatically. It simply does its quiet work of holding everything up, step after step, hour after hour. Another gentle reminder here, you're not required to keep up with the story. It's perfectly fine if your thoughts float away to something else entirely. This description of floors and footsteps is meant to be soft and repetitive on purpose, giving your mind something slow and harmless to drift around. Over many years, the floor also holds faint memories of change. New straw laid down, old straw removed. Fresh marks from furniture being moved. Slight depressions where people gather most. None of these changes are sharp or sudden. They build slowly, like layers of a story told without words, under the care of Allah who allows time to leave its prints. As you picture this medieval home one last time for now, imagine placing your feet firmly on its floor, bare, sandaled, or wrapped in simple fabric. Feel the firmness, the quiet chill or gentle warmth, the soft give of straw, the solid support of wood or earth. Then imagine that awareness slowly fading into the background, leaving only a sense of being held. And in that feeling, there is no need for a strong ending. The floor remains, the house remains, the night continues. Your thoughts can keep drifting downward, like dust gently settling after a busy day, until all that's left is stillness and a calm readiness to sleep. In many simple medieval homes, the true heart of the space wasn't a grand room or a fine piece of furniture. It was the place where warmth and food came together, the cooking area, the small hearth, the steady fire that people tended with care by the permission of Allah. This was where the day often began and ended, where flames turned raw ingredients into meals and cold air into something more welcoming and gentle. The hearth itself might be nothing more than a low, contained fire on a slightly raised patch of earth or stone. Around it, the floor would be a little more worn, a bit smoother from so many feet stepping close to stir a pot, add a log, or adjust a pothook. This space didn't need to be large. It only needed to hold flames safely, to give off enough heat, and to let its quiet presence spread through the room. Sometimes a simple metal or clay pot would hang above the fire, suspended on a hook or resting on stones. The bottom of the pot would be darkened from the smoke, marked by many meals already cooked. As it warmed, you might hear faint bubbling, a soft simmer that blended with the crackle of burning wood. These sounds formed a gentle rhythm, a calm soundtrack of daily life that did not rush or shout. A gentle reminder for you, you do not need to follow every detail closely. Let the image of a quiet fire and a softly bubbling pot sit in the background of your thoughts. If your mind wanders elsewhere and comes back now and then, that is perfectly fine. This is here to ease you, not to demand attention. Above the hearth, the air would be a little thicker, carrying more warmth and smoke. You could almost trace the path of the rising heat with your eyes, watching it blur the space just above the flames. Sometimes it would find its way out through a small hole or vent. Other times it lingered briefly before dispersing. The home and its people learned to live with this, adjusting windows, openings, and shutters as needed, using the understanding Allah allowed them. Around this central place, simple tools gathered: a wooden spoon worn smooth from stirring, a flat board used for cutting or serving, maybe a small knife kept safely away from where children might reach. These objects weren't displayed to impress anyone. They simply stayed near the fire because that was where they were needed most. Their presence added to the sense that this spot was where work, care, and comfort came together. The warmth from the hearth did not spread evenly, but it did reach slowly into the rest of the room. Those closest to it would feel the most heat on their hands and faces, while those farther away would sense only a soft, gentle touch of warmth mixed with cooler air. In cold seasons, people naturally drifted closer, forming a quiet circle around the center of the home, grateful for the relief that Allah allowed through such simple means. If you picture yourself sitting there, you might imagine stretching your hands toward the fire, feeling the difference between the warmth in front of you and the cooler air at your back. That contrast makes the warmth feel even more precious. It is not overwhelming. It is the kind of heat that invites slow breathing, relaxed shoulders, and calm thoughts. Sometimes, during quieter parts of the day, the fire would be kept very low, just glowing coals instead of tall flames. In those moments, the hearth felt more like a sleeping heart of the home, resting but not gone. The coals were ready to be stirred back to life when needed, holding onto a bit of warmth and light by Allah's will, even when they seemed nearly still. Another soft reminder: you don't need to hold the entire scene clearly in your mind. Even if all you remember is a small circle of light and warmth in an otherwise dim room, that is enough. Let that small image help your thoughts slow down and your body feel a little heavier and more ready to rest. Meals prepared at this hearth were often simple, but they carried deep importance. A pot of stew, a piece of bread warmed near the embers, water heated for a hot drink. None of it was fancy, but all of it felt meaningful. Each meal tied the household together, a quiet reminder of the daily provision that Allah sends, bite by bite, day after day. The area around the hearth also became a natural gathering point for quiet conversation. Not loud arguments or dramatic speeches, just soft talk, exchanged in low voices while hands worked. A question about the day's tasks, a remark about the weather, a story told slowly to pass the time. The fire gave people a place to face together, a shared focus that made words flow more gently. In the evenings, as tasks slowed and the room dimmed, the hearth often became the brightest point inside the home. Its glow painted warm colors onto nearby faces and walls. Shadows deepened around the edges of the room, while the center stayed alive with subtle motion, flickering light, shifting embers, and the slow rise of heat. It was as if the home's attention quietly gathered there. For children, the hearth might have felt like a place of both fascination and caution. They would be warned to keep a careful distance, but they would still watch the flames closely, learning the patterns of sparks, smoke, and glowing wood. Over time, they would see how older family members tended the fire, adding fuel carefully, never wasting what Allah had provided. If, as you listen, your thoughts are drifting or your eyes feel a little heavier, that is welcome here. This is a space meant for slowing down. The glow of the imagined fire, the steady warmth, and the soft sounds of cooking are all here to guide your mind gently toward quiet. As the night deepens outside, the hearth often becomes quieter but no less important. The largest flames may die down, leaving a core of glowing coals that give off a steady, softer warmth. This gentle heat spreads just enough to keep the chill from settling too sharply into the room, by the mercy of Allah who allows fire to serve as a tool and not a master. The home feels smaller now, drawn in around this resting heart. Someone in the household usually keeps an eye on the embers, even while conversations grow slower. A small piece of wood is added here and there, not to build the fire up too high, but to make sure it does not fade too quickly. It is a quiet duty, a simple act of care that helps the whole family. That watchfulness becomes part of the home's rhythm, repeated night after night. A gentle reminder for you as you listen. You do not need to stay sharply focused. Let the slow breathing of the fire, the warmth, and the calm movements around it flow past you like a soft, steady stream. Your mind is free to wander and return whenever it wishes. The smell around the hearth changes over the course of the day. When cooking is active, the air carries richer sense of food. As the pots are emptied and cleaned, those strong smells fade, replaced by the more neutral fragrance of wood, ash, and faint smoke. By late evening, the hearth smells less like a kitchen and more like a resting place, calm and familiar. Ash builds up gradually at the base of the fire. From time to time, someone will scoop it aside, clearing a space for new coals and fresh wood. The movement is slow and careful, so sparks do not leap out. The soft sound of ash being shifted, like sand being gently poured, adds another quiet note to the evening soundscape. Around this central area, people often find tasks that can be done while sitting. Mending clothing, preparing small tools for the next day, or sorting dried food. The light from the hearth makes these tasks easier, and the warmth keeps hands from growing stiff in cold weather. Work here feels different from daytime labor. It is slower, more thoughtful, shaded by the calm of approaching night. Another soft anchor. If you notice your eyes growing heavier or your attention drifting, that is exactly how this is meant to feel. You do not have to keep up with every detail. The steady presence of the hearth, imagined in your mind, can hold the story for you while you rest. For some families, this part of the home also becomes a place of quiet reflection. Not loud discussions or heated debates, but moments where people think over their day in silence or share a few soft words before sleep. The gentle, shifting light makes strong expressions seem out of place. Instead, everything leans toward calmness and soft voices. In colder seasons, blankets or cloaks might be spread closer to the hearth. People sit or lie where they can feel the warmth on their faces, while their backs rest in cooler air. This contrast makes the comfort more noticeable. It is a reminder of how, by Allah's kindness, even a small fire can turn a harsh night into something bearable. When the embers glow very low and only a faint orange light remains, the room changes once again. Shadows deepen, outlines soften, and the center of the home begins to look more like a memory than a bright point. The hearth is still there, still important, but it no longer calls for movement. It now invites rest, both for the people and for itself. Sometimes a small pot of water is left near the fire's edge, not boiling, just warming slightly. Its presence is a quiet promise of comfort if needed, whether for a warm drink or simple washing. Even in its stillness, it represents preparedness and care, using the means that Allah has allowed the family to manage. Another gentle reminder, you can let these images fade in and out without worry. The idea of a warm center in a quiet home is enough. You do not need to see every ember clearly. You are allowed to drift, to lose the thread, and to come back only if you wish. Eventually, someone may decide that it is time to let the fire sink even further, ready for the deepest part of the night. They might spread the coals slightly or cover them with a bit of ash, helping them cool slowly while still keeping a tiny spark alive for the morning. It is a small act of planning, a bridge between today and tomorrow, under the ongoing care of Allah. As the household settles fully into sleep, the hearth is no longer the focus of attention, but it remains the quiet heart of the home. Even in near darkness, it continues to shape the air, the temperature, and the feeling of safety in the room. Its presence is felt more than seen, like a soft, steady pulse. And as the imagined fire in this medieval home glows faintly in your mind, you may find your own thoughts glowing just a little less brightly too, dimming kindly toward rest. There is no need for a sharp conclusion here. The hearth simply continues to exist in its gentle way, while you are invited to grow heavier, quieter, and closer to sleep. Inside a simple medieval house, the sounds were few but meaningful. Without engines, devices, or constant background noise, every small sound carried a little more presence. The creak of wood, the soft thud of a footstep, the quiet shift of straw on the floor, all became part of a gentle daily rhythm. The house was never completely silent, but its sounds were slow and soft, like a calm heartbeat guided by the order Allah has placed in the world. One of the clearest sounds was the faint crackle of a small fire. It did not roar. It whispered. A tiny pop here, a soft crumble of charcoal there. Sometimes a piece of wood would settle and give a gentle sighing sound as it shifted. This low and steady crackle filled the background of the room, not demanding attention, just reminding everyone that warmth and light were still there. Occasionally, a wooden beam or plank would creak as the house adjusted to changes in temperature or weight. These creaks were not frightening. They were slow, drawn out, and familiar, like an old friend stretching after a long day. Over time, the people living there would know these sounds by heart, able to tell whether it was just the house relaxing or someone moving quietly in another corner. A gentle reminder for you as you listen. You do not need to focus sharply on every sound I describe. Let these ideas of crackling fire, creaking wood, and soft footsteps pass through your mind at their own pace. If your thoughts drift elsewhere and then wander back, that is completely fine and even expected. Footsteps inside the home were often muted. The packed earth or straw-covered floor softened the impact of each step. A bare foot might make only the faintest pad against the ground. A simple shoe or sandal might create a dull, gentle thump. In a quiet house, you could tell who was moving just by the weight and rhythm of their steps, without needing to see them. Children added their own pattern of sound. Light, quick steps across the floor. A small stumble. A short pause. A muffled laugh or whisper. These sounds brought a bit of life and movement into the otherwise steady calm. They did not feel out of place. They fit naturally into the soundscape of the home, like birdsong in a peaceful field Allah has created. When people worked with their hands, they added more soft sounds. A wooden spoon stirring in a pot, making a gentle tapping against the rim. Cloth being folded with a quiet flap. Grain being poured from one container to another. A soft rattling stream that ended in a cushioned hush. None of these sounds were loud, but together they formed the background music of daily tasks. Another soft anchor for your thoughts. You're not required to hold on to each detail like a list. Think of these sounds as small ripples on a very still pond. You can notice them, then let them fade, while the deeper stillness underneath helps you relax a little more with each breath. At times, you might hear the faint brushing of a broom across the floor. The movement was slow and steady, sending small bits of straw or dust sliding forward in gentle waves. The sound was soft and repetitive, almost like a whispered pattern. It said that someone was caring for the home, keeping it ordered and clean, using the strength and ability that Allah has given. Metal was rare in a simple home, but when it appeared, it had its own clear voice. The ring of a small knife being set down on a wooden surface. The faint clink of a metal pot against stone. These sounds stood out more sharply against the otherwise muted tones, but they came and went quickly, leaving the calm behind them untouched. The walls and roof softened outside noises. You might catch a muffled dog bark from a distance, the call of a rooster, or the low murmur of voices passing by. Wind sliding along the outer wooden parts might create a gentle sigh, or a soft rattle if it met a loose shutter. All of these faint sounds reminded the family that there was a wider world beyond their quiet room, shaped by the same creator. Inside, when people spoke, they usually matched the softness of the house. Voices tended to stay low, especially in the evenings when work was done. A few quiet sentences, a shared thought, a small story told slowly near the fire. Loud shouting would feel out of place here, like a stone thrown into still water. The space itself seemed to invite gentler tones and calmer words. In the quietest moments, the loudest sound might simply be breathing. The slow inhale and exhale of people resting, each breath blending with the next. The house almost seemed to breathe with them, its wood, straw, and earth settling into the same slow rhythm. That subtle harmony made the room feel like a safe place to grow drowsy. If your own breathing has become a little slower as you imagine this, that is welcome. You do not need to force it. Just notice that, in your mind, you are sitting in a place where nothing rushes, where every sound is small, familiar, and harmless. Let your thoughts loosen their grip, the way a hand slowly relaxes after a long day. From time to time, a pot lid might shift, a chair leg might scrape gently, or a small bundle might be set down with a soft bump. These brief sounds rose and fell in the air like tiny waves, never staying long enough to disturb the overall calm. They simply appeared for a moment, then melted back into the background of fire, footsteps, and quiet breath. As evening moved into night, the sounds inside the house grew fewer. Work ended. Voices faded. The broom was put away, the pot left to cool, and the fire allowed to sink into glowing coals. The creaks grew softer and less frequent. What remained was a peaceful hush, interrupted only by the rare shifting of a sleeper or the faint sigh of wind outside, under the watch of Allah who never sleeps even as his creation rests. As the night deepens, the few remaining sounds inside the medieval house grow even softer. The fire has mostly settled into quiet embers, making only the tiniest crackling noises now and then, like a faint whisper under the breath of the room. Each soft sound feels spaced far apart, giving long stretches of stillness in between, as if the house is pausing, listening, and resting along with the people inside. Sometimes, a sleeper shifts gently on their bedding. A rustle of cloth, a small sigh, the faint creak of a wooden frame or floorboard. These sounds are not sharp or alarming. They are the natural, peaceful movements of tired bodies seeking a more comfortable position. After each small disturbance, the quiet returns, spreading slowly back into every corner of the room by the will of Allah, who grants the night as a time of rest. A gentle reminder for you: you do not need to stay fully alert to these details. Let them come and go. The idea of a quiet house at night, with only the softest sounds remaining, is enough. Your mind can drift whenever it wants, like smoke rising and fading into the dark. Outside, the world has its own distant sounds. Perhaps an animal moves faintly in a nearby field, or a branch taps softly against the wall in a light breeze. These noises reach the home in muffled form, filtered by wood, earth, and fabric. They become soft, blurry hints of life beyond the walls, never loud enough to break the sense of shelter inside. If rain begins to fall, it adds a new layer of calm to the soundscape. Drops tapping gently on the roof, occasionally gathering into a small trickle along one edge. The rhythm may change from steady to uneven and back again, but it remains quiet and soothing. This gentle knocking of rain makes the inside of the house feel even more protected, a reminder of the shelter Allah has allowed the family to have. When the wind rises just a little, it might slip through tiny gaps around shutters or under the door, creating a faint, low whistle or a soft, breathy sound. Instead of feeling threatening, it becomes part of the background, a reminder that outside is cooler, wilder, and more exposed, while inside remains controlled and familiar. The home stands firmly, by Allah's permission, between the family and the elements. Another soft anchor. As you listen to these imagined sounds, you can let your muscles loosen. The body often responds naturally to the idea of gentle, predictable noises. There is nothing here that jumps, surprises, or demands. Everything is slow, mild, and easy to fade into the background as you become sleepier. In the darkest part of the night, the house may reach its quietest moment. Everyone is lying down. No one is tending the fire, no one is working, and no one is sweeping or cooking. The structure itself seems to rest. Any creak or shift becomes rare, a single small noise followed by long stretches of deep silence, like the pause between slow heartbeats. If someone wakes briefly, they might hear only three main sounds: their own breathing, the breathing of others nearby, and maybe the faintest rustle of wind or rain outside. These three layers blend into one soft atmosphere, thick with calm. It is the kind of quiet that makes the eyelids heavy again very quickly, encouraging the person to sleep once more under the care of Allah. Sometimes an animal kept near the house, perhaps outside or in a small attached space, might make a low sound. A soft movement, a gentle snort, or a distant shuffle. These noises are familiar to the family, expected and understood. They are not intrusions, just part of the shared life between humans, animals, and the land Allah has created for them to use responsibly. Inside, the simple tools of the home rest in silence. The pot is still, the spoon is still, the broom leans quietly against a wall. In the hush of the night, even objects seem to be waiting. There is no clatter, no scraping, nothing to be lifted or set down. The absence of activity becomes its own kind of sound, a deep, comfortable hush that fills the space without needing to be heard. Another gentle reminder: you do not need to stay in control of your attention. If your mind wants to wander away from this medieval house to something else and then back again, that is perfectly allowed. The steady quiet of this place is here to guide you toward rest, not to keep you working. When dawn begins to approach, the first new sounds are incredibly small. Maybe a slight change in the way the wind moves. The tiniest shift from someone stirring before fully waking. But even then, the house holds onto its calm. The louder sounds of day have not yet returned. For a little while longer, the medieval home remains wrapped in night softness, as Allah's creation slowly turns toward another morning. Until that moment fully arrives, the soundscape stays simple: a faint ember crackling, a breath, a rustle, a whisper of wind, maybe the distant patter of rain. These are the kind of sounds that do not push you away from sleep, but invite you closer to it. They are gentle companions for anyone drifting at the edge of dreams. And as the imagined night continues inside this old, quiet house, there is no need for a sudden ending. The sounds do not stop all at once. They simply stay soft, steady, and familiar, leaving plenty of space for your own thoughts to grow slower, lighter, and finally, if Allah wills, to fade gently into sleep. In a simple medieval home, furniture did not try to impress anyone. It was there to serve. Each piece was shaped from wood, earth, or cloth that Allah had created, turned by human hands into something useful and steady. When you step into this quiet room in your imagination, you do not see rows of decorations. You see a few humble objects, each with a purpose, each resting calmly in its place, adding to the feeling of quiet order. At the center, or slightly to one side, there might be a sturdy wooden table. It is not polished to shine, and its edges are not perfectly straight. The surface bears marks from years of use, small cuts and dents from knives, bowls, and daily tasks. When a hand rests on it, it feels solid and reassuring, like a familiar friend that has held countless meals, tools, and folded cloths by the permission of Allah, who allows trees to become timber. Around this table, you might find simple benches or stools. They are shaped from thick planks and roughly carved legs, strong enough to hold the weight of those who sit day after day. The seats are hard but dependable. Some may have a slight curve worn into them from years of use, shaped gradually by people leaning, sitting, and resting there in quiet conversation or silence. A gentle reminder for you as you listen: you do not need to picture everything sharply. Let these images of tables, benches, and worn wood feel soft around the edges. If your mind drifts away for a moment and then returns, that is perfectly fine. This story is meant to move at the same slow pace as the room it describes. Near one wall, there may be a wooden chest. Its lid is heavy, its hinges simple, perhaps made from metal where the family could afford it. Inside, they might keep clothing, blankets, or important tools. To open it, someone must use both hands, lifting slowly and carefully. The creak of the lid and the faint smell of stored cloth and wood rise together, familiar signs of a place where belongings are kept safe under the care of Allah. The chest surface might also serve as another tabletop when needed. A folded cloth laid over it turns it into a temporary place for kneading dough, setting down a basket, or arranging small items. In this way, each piece of furniture often has more than one role. Nothing here is wasted, and nothing exists without some quiet duty in the flow of daily life. Another soft anchor: you are not required to remember each object. Think of these things as gentle shapes in a dim room. A table, a stool, a chest, all resting in stillness. Even if the details fade, the calm feeling they create can remain with you, helping your thoughts grow slower and more peaceful. On another side of the room, a small shelf might be attached to the wall or supported by simple brackets. It holds a few precious items, perhaps a carefully kept cup, a small bowl, a jar of herbs or grains. Each object is placed with care, not for display, but to keep it safe and within reach. The shelf itself is narrow and quiet, a small strip of wood that turns empty air into useful space. Clay pots and simple jars also have their place. Some sit on the floor near the walls, others rest on shelves or ledges. Their surfaces are rough or slightly uneven, shaped by hand and hardened by heat, using the materials and knowledge Allah has allowed people to discover. They hold water, dried food, or cooking ingredients, turning fragile supplies into something more protected and lasting. Textiles bring softness into this world of wood and earth. A folded blanket on a chest, a piece of cloth draped over a stool, or a simple covering laid across the table. These fabrics add gentle lines and curves, the way a stream softens the edges of a stone. They carry faint scents of wool, smoke, and the outside air, all blended together in quiet layers. If you notice your own body relaxing a little as you imagine these resting objects, that is welcome. You do not have to force anything. Just allow the idea of a room with only a few humble belongings to give you a sense of lightness, as if there is less for the mind to hold on to and worry about. Near the hearth, a few tools are kept close at hand. A wooden ladle hanging from a peg, a metal hook for lifting pots, a flat board leaning against the wall. None of them are shiny or decorative. They show signs of hard use, but they are cared for because they help turn raw food into warm meals by Allah's permission. Returning them to their places after use becomes a simple, steady habit. In one corner, there might be a low stool or a simple chair that an elder favors. The legs press deeper into the earth or straw from years of use, leaving faint impressions. This spot becomes quietly associated with rest and wisdom, not because of any decoration, but because of the person who often sits there, thinking or watching the room's gentle movements. Another gentle reminder: if your thoughts wander away from this medieval house and then float back again, that is completely fine. The furniture and objects here are patient in your imagination. They are not going anywhere. They simply exist, calmly, while your mind does whatever it needs to do as it moves toward rest. Even small containers, like woven baskets, play their part. They might hold scraps of cloth, dried plants, or small tools. Their fibers are rough to the touch, patterned not for show but for strength. When someone lifts one, there is a faint creak from the woven strands, a reminder that even these simple objects are part of the larger pattern of provision Allah has placed in daily life. Looking around this room, you might realize how few things are truly needed. A place to sit, a place to work, a place to store clothing and food. Each object earns its presence by being useful and steady. In this simplicity, there is room for the mind to breathe, for the eyes to rest, and for thoughts to slow down without being pulled in many directions. Some pieces of furniture in the home might never move very far from their spots. A stool always near the hearth. A chest always beneath a certain section of wall. Over time, these positions become so natural that no one questions them. The house feels organized not through strict rules, but through quiet habits repeated day after day, under the ongoing flow of time that Allah allows. At night, when the fire grows low and the room darkens, the furniture and objects turn into softer shapes. The table becomes a darker block in the center or side of the room. The chest becomes a low shadow against the wall. Stools and baskets blend into the dimness. Nothing looks sharp or demanding. It all melts into a calm landscape of outlines and forms, easy for the mind to drift past on its way to sleep. In this dim light, the surfaces feel more important than the shapes. A hand reaching out in the dark will find the edge of the table, the curve of a stool, or the rough weave of a basket. These familiar touches reassure the person moving through the room. They know where things are, and the home responds predictably, thanks to the order they've built with the means Allah has given them. A gentle reminder for you: you do not need to hold all these images clearly at once. Let them blur and soften. A table here, a chest there, a few tools by the hearth, that is enough. The goal is not to keep track, but to let your thoughts settle into a slower, calmer rhythm. During the day, when light is stronger, these objects show their textures more clearly. Knife marks on the table, small chips at the edge of a bowl, slight fraying at the corners of a woven mat. These tiny flaws do not make the objects less valuable, they make them more familiar. They prove that these things have served again and again, by Allah's permission, and are still here. Sometimes, a single new object arrives in the home: a better pot, a newly made stool, a fresh cloth. Its colors might look brighter at first, its surface smoother, its edges sharper. Over time, it too will fade slightly, grow softer, and take on the shared look of everything else in the room, joining the quiet story of the household. Another soft anchor. As you listen, you might notice that nothing in this room is trying to compete for your attention. There are no loud colors, no flashing lights, no clutter. Just a few steady objects, each doing its job. Let that simplicity gently influence your own thoughts, making them less crowded and easier to let go of. The way objects are arranged also helps guide movement. A clear space near the door for entering and leaving. The table positioned so people can sit around it. The chest set where it will not block pathways. Without written plans or drawings, the family learns how to place things so that life can flow easily around them, with the subtle guidance Allah inspires in human minds. When guests visit, they share the same furniture and objects. A stool is offered. A spot at the table is cleared. A bowl is handed over. In this way, the simple items of the home become tools of kindness and hospitality. They support not only eating and working, but also connection between people, which is part of the mercy Allah places between hearts. In quieter moments, when no one is cooking, weaving, or sorting, the objects rest in place. The room becomes almost like a still painting, the table waiting, the stools waiting, the chest closed, the tools hanging in their places. This stillness does not feel empty. It feels ready, prepared for the next small task, the next calm conversation, the next shared meal. Another gentle reminder: if your mind has begun to wander away from these images, you do not need to pull it back forcefully. This medieval room, with its simple furniture, can remain in the background like a quiet picture. You can drift in and out of it as you grow more relaxed. Even the smallest items have a role. A wooden cup, always placed near a certain corner. A small knife, wrapped in cloth when not in use. A spool of thread, kept out of the way so it does not roll across the floor. Each one has a spot where it belongs, making it easier to find when needed. This simple order reduces worry and confusion by the blessing of clarity Allah grants to those who seek it. Occasionally, an object breaks or wears out completely. A stool leg splits, a pot cracks, a basket's weave loosens beyond repair. When this happens, the family must decide whether it can be fixed or must be replaced. These small decisions shape the room over time, as older pieces leave and newer ones come, always within the limits and provisions Allah sets for them. If you scan the room one last time in your imagination, you see only what is necessary: a place to sit, a place to work, a place to store, a place to cook. Nothing screams for attention. Nothing overwhelms the senses. It is a space built for living, not for showing off, and that simplicity makes it deeply peaceful. And as these humble objects fade gently into the dim light of your thoughts, you do not need a sharp ending or a final statement. The table is still there, the chest is still there, the tools are still hanging by the hearth. They will be waiting, quietly, while you allow your own mind to grow quieter, softer, and more ready to rest, if Allah wills. Warmth in a simple medieval home was not just about heat. It was about feeling held, gathered, and protected from the cold world outside. When the air turned sharp and the wind pressed against the walls, the inside of the house became a gentle refuge by the mercy of Allah. The warmth here did not come from one source alone, but from fire, shared company, thick walls, and simple fabrics all working together in quiet harmony. The fire near the heart of the home was the most obvious source. Its glow reached outward in soft circles, warming faces and hands first, then slowly spreading to the rest of the body. People would sit where the balance felt just right, not too close to sting the skin, not too far to feel the chill. That perfect spot became a personal little island of comfort, a place where muscles loosened and shoulders dropped without anyone needing to say a word. The walls of the house, made from earth, wood, or stone, played their part too. By Allah's design of materials, they held back the wind and kept out the worst of the cold. During the day, they absorbed some of the warmth from the fire and bodies inside. At night, they released that warmth slowly, not enough to make the room hot, but enough to prevent the cold from biting too deeply into sleeping people and resting hands. A gentle reminder for you as you listen: you do not need to build this whole room clearly in your mind. Let the idea of a warm pocket of space in a cold world be soft and simple. If your thoughts drift or grow blurry, that is perfectly fine. The feeling matters more than the details. Clothing also became a part of warmth and comfort. Layers of wool, linen, or other modest fabrics, given by Allah through animals and plants, wrapped around shoulders and bodies. When someone sat near the fire, the outer cloth might feel warm first, then gradually pass that warmth inward. A cloak draped over the back, a shawl around the head and neck, simple socks, or wrappings on the feet, all worked together to keep the chill away. Blankets and bedding added another layer of comfort. At night, they were spread on top of straw or simple padding on the floor. When people lay down, the roughness of the ground became less noticeable, replaced by the gentle weight of fabric and the shared warmth of nearby bodies. Over time, these blankets took on the familiar scent of smoke, wool, and clean air, making them feel even more like home. Another soft anchor for you. You do not have to follow every sentence. Imagine only this if you like: a person sitting or lying under a warm but comforting blanket, feeling the slow spread of warmth from the fire and from their own resting body, under the watch and care of Allah. That single image can be enough. Shared warmth played a big role in comfort. Families often sat close together, not only for conversation, but because simply being near each other helped keep the cold away. Shoulders might brush, knees might nearly touch. Children might lean against a parent, borrowing heat and comfort at the same time. This closeness was not just physical. It carried a quiet reassurance that they were not facing the cold alone. Even the floor could hold a kind of warmth. Straw or rushes laid down in thicker layers formed small islands of softer, slightly warmer ground. Sitting there near the fire, someone could feel heat from above, from their clothing, and from the ground that had slowly absorbed warmth throughout the day. It was never completely even, but it was enough to ease the body after long hours of work. Warmth also came from familiarity and routine. Knowing exactly where to sit to feel the best heat. Knowing which blanket was the thickest. Knowing how long it took the room to feel cozy after the fire was lit. These small pieces of understanding, granted by Allah as part of human learning, made the home feel less like shelter alone and more like a trusted companion through each season. Sometimes, a simple warm drink added to the comfort. Water heated near the fire and poured into a cup, perhaps infused with herbs or simple plants. Holding the cup warmed cold fingers first, then the liquid warmed the body from the inside, spreading slowly to the chest and stomach. It was a quiet kind of relief, not dramatic, but deeply satisfying on a cold, still night. If you notice your own body responding, maybe a slight release of tension in your shoulders or neck, that is welcome here. You are only imagining someone else's warmth and comfort, but your mind can borrow a little of that feeling. You do not need to force anything. Just let the idea of this small, protected space sink in. In the harshest weather, extra care was taken. Gaps around doors or shutters might be filled with cloth or straw to block the wind. People gathered closer together. The fire was watched more carefully. Outside might be unforgiving, but inside, the family worked with the means Allah had given them to create a circle of safety and warmth, even if it was small. Comfort also meant relief from pain and strain. After a long day of work, sitting down near the fire, feeling the warmth soak slowly into tired hands and aching feet, could feel like a blessing far beyond its simplicity. In those moments, the house itself seemed to exhale along with its people, loosening the tightness from the day as night gently settled in. As you imagine this medieval home wrapped in warmth, you might notice that nothing about it is perfect or luxurious. The comfort here is quiet, modest, and built from small pieces: a fire, a blanket, a wall, a shared seat. Yet through these simple things, by Allah's mercy, the cold is held back, and the people inside are given enough ease to rest, recover, and face another day. On quieter evenings, warmth in the home was also something you felt in the way people moved. No one rushed. Tasks slowed down. Voices dropped into softer tones. The gentle heat from the fire, the weight of blankets, and the steady presence of loved ones created a kind of calm that wrapped around the mind as much as the body, a calm made possible by the mercy of Allah who allows hearts to find ease in simple moments. Sometimes, a parent might quietly adjust a child's blanket while they slept, tucking it more firmly around their shoulders or feet. The child might not fully wake, only shift slightly and sink deeper into rest. That small act of care added another layer of comfort to the room, a reminder that warmth was not just physical, but also carried through kindness and attention given for the sake of Allah. A gentle reminder for you: as you picture this, you don't need to see every detail clearly. It's enough to feel the idea of a space where people look after each other, where warmth comes from both the fire and from quiet, sincere care. Let that thought sit softly in the back of your mind while your body continues to unwind. Warmth could also be felt in small shared moments, hands extended together toward the same fire, shoulders leaning close while listening to a story, or a simple smile exchanged across the dim room. These moments didn't need big words. Just knowing that others were near, facing the same cold outside and the same glow inside, helped people feel less alone, a blessing Allah places in companionship. The sound of crackling wood and the occasional soft murmur of conversation created a background that made it easier to relax. There were no harsh noises to jolt the senses. If someone fell quiet mid-sentence, lost in their own thoughts, no one rushed them. The warmth of the room made silence feel natural, even welcome, like another blanket spread over tired minds. Another soft anchor. You don't have to follow the story tightly. If your thoughts wander to your own memories of warmth, a favorite blanket, a calm evening, a quiet room, that's perfectly fine. You can drift there for a while and return whenever you like. The medieval home will still be here in your imagination, resting by the firelight. Even the small routines of seeking comfort became part of the home's gentle rhythm. Shifting closer to the hearth, turning a blanket so the warmer side faced inward, checking that no cold wind slipped through a crack in the door. These simple motions, repeated night after night, gave people a sense of control over their environment, using the means Allah had made available to them. On some nights, the warmth might not be perfect. Perhaps the fire was smaller, or the air felt especially sharp. Yet even then, the effort to gather, to share space, to lay a cloth and straw, showed a steady trust in the tools and abilities Allah had provided. Comfort was not always complete, but it was always sought with patience and hope. As the hour grew later, the warmth of the day's fire lingered gently in the air, mixing with the warmth of sleeping bodies. The house itself seemed to hold a quiet memory of all the movement, conversation, and care that had taken place within its walls. That memory settled like a soft presence around those who were drifting into deeper sleep. Another gentle reminder, you don't have to do anything special with these images. You're not solving a problem or trying to remember every part. You're simply letting your mind walk through a calm, warm room where nothing urgent is happening and nothing is expected of you. If your eyelids feel heavier, you can let them. In the darkest part of the night, when the fire had sunk to faint embers and most people were fully asleep, the warmth remaining in the home felt quieter but still comforting. It was enough to keep the cold from feeling sharp, enough to let rest continue. In that soft middle ground between warmth and chill, the house and its people rested together under the constant protection of Allah. By the time morning approached, the last of the night's warmth slowly began to fade, reminding the household that another fire would need to be kindled, more work would need to be done, and more comfort would be sought. But for now, in this imagined moment, the warmth still lingers, steady and gentle, giving you space to breathe more slowly and, if Allah wills, to drift closer to sleep. When night fully settled inside a medieval home, the feeling was very different from the day. Light no longer flowed through small windows and cracks. Instead, the room became a soft, enclosed world of shadows and gentle sounds. Outside, the sky darkened, but inside, people drew closer to the faint glow of the hearth or a small lamp, gathering into a circle of calm that felt separate from the cold and unknown beyond the walls, by the mercy of Allah. As evening turned into true night, colors inside the home slowly disappeared. Browns, reds, and soft earthy tones faded into deeper shades until almost everything became a mix of dark shapes. Your eyes did most of the work at first, trying to recognize the familiar outlines of the table, chest, and hearth. Then, as the darkness grew thicker, your other senses quietly stepped forward to help, making the room feel calmer and more intimate. Sounds grew softer as people finished their tasks. The gentle clink of cups, the last fold of cloth, the final sweep of a broom, all came to an end. Voices dropped into quiet murmurs, then into silence. What remained was the slow crackle of low embers, the faint rustle of straw, and the steady rhythm of breathing. The whole house felt like it was exhaling after a long day, relaxing into the night that Allah had placed as a time of rest. In the dimness, Shadows filled the corners of the room, but they did not need to feel threatening. The people who lived there knew every inch of the space. They could walk across the floor by memory, reaching for familiar objects without needing to see them clearly. The darkness felt more like a heavy blanket laid gently over everything, inviting minds and bodies to settle down rather than stay alert. The coolness of night slowly crept into the home, but the remaining warmth from the hearth softened its edge. If you imagine standing there, you might feel the cool air against your back and the warmer air touching your face. That contrast gave the night its character indoors, a quiet reminder that the world outside might be harsh, but in this small place, Allah had allowed a pocket of protection and comfort. For many, there was a quiet sense of safety in these enclosed nights. The walls kept out the wind and much of the noise, and the door, once closed, marked a clear boundary between outside and inside. Within that boundary, people trusted that they could sleep, trusting in Allah's protection. The house, with all its imperfections, became a shield against the unseen cold, animals, and weather beyond. A gentle reminder for you as you listen: you do not need to hold on to every image. Let the idea of a dark, quiet room where people feel safe be soft and loose in your mind. If your thoughts wander, that is completely fine. You can drift in and out of this medieval home as your body continues to relax. Before sleep, there was usually a small routine. Someone would check the door, making sure it was closed properly. Another person might look at the hearth, arranging the embers so they would last a little longer or cool safely. Tools were put back in their places, cups and pots were moved out of walkways, and blankets were spread on the floor. These small tasks gave the night a gentle structure, a series of steps that led naturally toward rest. As the last tasks finished, the smells inside the home became softer too. The strong scent of cooking faded, leaving behind a mild mix of wood, wool, smoke, and earth. The air felt thicker and quieter, like it was settling down along with everyone else. Breathing in this nighttime air felt different from breathing during the day. It was slower, cooler, and somehow calmer, as if the whole room had gone quiet in respect for the night Allah had made. People began to choose their sleeping spots. Blankets were shared, straw was shifted, and bodies stretched out in rows or clusters. The table and stools, so important during the day, became silent witnesses to this change. The home transformed from a place of movement into a place of stillness. The same room that had seen work, eating, and conversation now held resting forms, wrapped in cloth and quiet. The last light in the room, whether from a fading lamp or the embers of the fire, played across the surfaces in small, gentle patches. Light no longer reached the walls or the far corners. It simply rested on a few faces, a piece of cloth, or the edge of the hearth. As eyes grew heavier, even that faint glow stopped demanding notice, becoming just another soft shape behind closed lids. Another soft anchor for you. You do not have to visualize all this sharply. If all you keep is the feeling of lying down in a dim, warm space, with a low light somewhere nearby and stillness all around, that is enough. Let that simple thought help your muscles loosen and your breathing slow. Time felt different at night inside this kind of home. Without clocks or glowing screens, people measured the hours by how the fire changed, how their bodies felt, and how the sound shifted. The first part of the night might feel long, full of small adjustments and drifting thoughts. Later, as sleep deepened, the passing of time faded from awareness, left entirely to Allah who never loses track of any moment. Sometimes, before sleep fully arrived, a person might lie quietly and listen. They would hear the slow breath of family members nearby, the tiny movement of a blanket, or the faintest sound from outside. These sounds reassured them that life continued calmly all around. They were not alone. The house was filled with a shared stillness, a stillness that encouraged their thoughts to soften and their eyes to close. In those last awake moments, some hearts might turn to Allah in quiet, personal remembrance, thanking Him for the day that had passed and the shelter they had been given. No grand speeches were needed, just a simple, silent turning of the heart toward the one who kept them safe through the dark, even when they were too tired to do anything more than breathe and trust. As you imagine this scene, you might notice a similar feeling begin to settle over you. A dim room. Soft sounds, slow breathing, familiar shapes fading into darkness. Nothing urgent waits there, nothing loud interrupts. It is the kind of night that supports sleep rather than fights it, a night that simply unfolds around resting people by Allah's permission, while they drift gently toward deeper rest. As the house settled deeper into the night, the darkness became thicker, almost velvety. It wrapped itself around every object and every sleeping form, softening the sharpness of the day. In this gentle dimness, the home felt smaller but more comforting, as if the walls leaned slightly inward, not to trap, but to shelter. This closeness wasn't stifling. It was calming, a reminder that the world outside could wait until morning by the will and protection of Allah. If a faint breeze slipped through a tiny gap in the shutter or along the doorframe, it didn't rush. It wandered into the room like a cool ribbon, brushing lightly across someone's cheek or the top of a blanket. It carried the scent of night air, earthy, still, sometimes touched by distant plants or rain. This little current of freshness made the warmth of blankets feel even more comforting, like tucking oneself deeper into a safe, familiar nest. Some nights were especially quiet, quiet enough that a person lying awake could hear the slow settling of the home itself. A beam shifting softly, a loose straw on the floor rustling under the weight of someone rolling slightly in their sleep. These were not noises to fear. They were part of the rhythm of a living space adjusting to temperature and time, much like breathing. The house had its own calm pattern, created by Allah's natural laws, and everyone inside belonged gently to it. A gentle reminder for you. You are welcome to let these images soften in your mind. If the shapes and details start to blur, let them. This story is meant to act like soft night air, something your thoughts drift through, not something you must hold tightly. Sometimes, someone would briefly wake for a moment. Not fully, just enough to shift a blanket, readjust their position, or check a child's warmth. Eyes half open, they would see little more than a dim glow from the fading embers. The world was too dark to fully register anything, and sleep pulled them back quickly. These tiny interruptions didn't break the night's pace. They added to it, threads of movement woven into long stretches of stillness. In a shared sleeping space like this, warmth moved from person to person in quiet waves. When bodies rested close, their combined heat softened the bite of cold air settling across the floor. Blankets rose and fell with slow breaths. If someone moved, the cloth shifted with them, adjusting the warmth automatically as if the home itself was helping preserve comfort. Another soft anchor. If your mind is drifting while reading this, you can let it drift further. Imagine the slow breathing of the people in a room, the way it blends into a single, steady atmosphere of rest. Let yourself sink a little into that rhythm, even if only in your imagination. As the night passed, the embers in the hearth dimmed further, shrinking into small, glowing clusters. Their light was barely enough to outline the edges of the hearth or the curve of a pot left nearby. The warmth they offered was faint, no longer enough to heat the room but enough to keep total darkness from settling in completely. This faint glow acted like a final guardian of the night, a tiny reminder of warmth given by Allah even in the quietest hours. Outside, the world might shift slowly too. The distant calls of animals might fade. The wind might change direction. A light rain might begin or end. But inside the home, these things felt far away, softened by walls and blankets and the steady presence of sleeping bodies. Night became its own small universe, unaffected by anything except time and breath. If dawn was still far off, the room might feel suspended in a kind of timelessness. No one knew the exact hour. There were no ticking clocks, no screens, no alarms. People relied on the natural pull of tiredness, the dimming of the fire, and the cooling air to measure the night. In that timeless space, rest came easier because nothing urged anyone to hurry or worry. Sometimes, someone might dream quietly, shifting or murmuring faintly. A child might nestle deeper against a parent. Someone else might tighten their blanket. These small, unspoken movements continued without waking the household. They were gentle reminders that even in sleep, care and connection persisted among family members by Allah's mercy. Another gentle reminder, it's okay if your thoughts are softening, if your focus dips in and out. Let these imagined nights guide you into a calmer pace. You don't need to keep up. This is meant to soothe, not demand. Near the end of the night, the house reached its deepest stillness. The embers barely glowed. The air grew cool again. The sound of breathing filled the space like a quiet tide. In this moment, the home and its people rested together, sharing the same quiet surrender to sleep, trusting that Allah protects them through the hours they do not witness. Eventually, even without fully waking, someone might sense the first change of dawn, the faintest shift in the air, a slightly lighter darkness filtering through a shutter, or the distant sound of a rooster signaling the new day. But the home did not rush to greet it. The transition from night to morning was slow, natural, and peaceful. And as this imagined night lingers in your mind, you can feel the same gentle invitation. A dim room, soft breaths, a fading ember, a quiet sense of safety. Nothing demanding, nothing loud, only the slow, steady unfolding of rest, if Allah wills. Let your thoughts settle into that stillness as you drift toward your own quiet darkness. The overall feeling of a medieval home was shaped less by what you saw and more by what you sensed, the warmth, the quiet, the closeness of the space, and the slow rhythm of life inside it. When you stepped through the door, the world outside seemed to soften. The sharpness of wind faded, the noise of work and travel dissolved, and the house gathered you into its gentle, steady calm by the mercy of Allah who provides shelter in many forms. During the day, the home felt alive but not loud. Soft footsteps, light voices, the rustle of straw, and the quiet bubbling of a pot created a soundscape that encouraged slower breathing. There was a natural order to everything, as if the house itself knew how to balance activity and rest. Even simple movements, folding cloth, stirring food, sweeping the floor, contributed to a peaceful, lived-in atmosphere. The light inside shaped the room's mood. Sunlight arrived in gentle beams, not floods. It touched certain areas and left others in shadow. This pattern made the space feel layered, with places for work, places for gathering, and places for rest. When daylight faded, the glow of the hearth replaced it, adding warm, soft colors that made the home feel even more intimate. A gentle reminder as you imagine this, you don't have to hold every detail tightly. Let the feeling of the space be broad and soft. The goal is not precision but comfort. If your mind drifts, let it drift. You can always return to this quiet room in your imagination. Objects in the medieval home were few but meaningful. A wooden table worn smooth by years of meals. A stool carved roughly yet strong. A blanket folded and kept for warmth. Each item contributed to the sense of stability, of life unfolding slowly but purposefully. Nothing felt excessive. Nothing distracted the eye. The simplicity itself created calm. The air inside carried a mixture of scents, earth from the floor, smoke from the hearth, wool from blankets, and faint echoes of cooked meals. None of these smells were overwhelming. They blended into a mild, comforting cloud that made the space feel honest and grounded. Breathing in that air felt like stepping into a memory that never hurried, a rhythm set by the natural laws Allah created. Movement within the home was gentle. People knew how to navigate the space quietly, avoiding harsh sounds or sudden motions. Even children, with all their energy, often adapted to the home's slower rhythm, learning where to run and where to tiptoe. Every movement added to the sense of harmony rather than breaking it. Another soft anchor. Let your thoughts soften too. Even if you picture nothing more than a faint glow, a quiet room, and a pair of slow footsteps, that is enough. These scenes are meant to loosen tension, not add to it. Comfort in the home did not come from luxury. It came from warmth, familiarity, closeness, and shared routines. A blanket warmed near the fire. A stool placed in the same spot every night. A pot simmering slowly, promising nourishment. These simple gestures formed the emotional backbone of the household, creating a feeling of care and continuity allowed by Allah. At night, the home felt especially sheltered. Darkness outside contrasted with the dim glow inside, making the house feel like an island of quiet warmth. Resting bodies, slow breathing, and the cooling air created an atmosphere that supported deep, uninterrupted rest. There were no bright lights, no buzzing machines, only the natural rise and fall of quiet. The home also held a sense of humility. Nothing inside claimed importance beyond its use. You could feel, in the textures and sounds and shadows, that life here was connected to the earth, simple, modest, and sincere. That humility brought its own peace, a sense that nothing was wasted and everything had its place. Children learned lessons from the home without anyone needing to speak them aloud. They observed gentleness, patience, gratitude for warmth and food, and the quiet cooperation needed to keep the space running. These lessons sank into them naturally, shaped by daily repetition and the steady blessings Allah placed in ordinary living. Another gentle reminder for you: if your eyes feel heavy or your thoughts stretch out into quiet gaps, that is perfectly fine. This is a calm space, and you are welcome to settle into it however you like. During storms or harsh weather, the home felt even more precious. The sound of wind outside made the hearth's warmth feel richer. The dim light felt safer. Being gathered with family inside a sturdy, simple space became a deeply comforting experience, reminding everyone that protection and calm ultimately come through Allah's mercy, even when the house is humble. And in the stillest moments, when the fire dimmed, when the voices faded, when the night settled in fully, the medieval home felt like a quiet sanctuary. Not a place of grandeur or display, but a place where the heart could loosen, where work could pause, and where sleep could come naturally, gently, without resistance. In that calm space, you may find your own thoughts slowing too. No strict ending is needed, no final note. The feeling of this medieval home, the warmth, the softness, the hush, can simply linger with you as long as you need it, helping you drift a little deeper into rest, if Allah wills. When morning approached, the overall feeling of the medieval home shifted gently, but never abruptly. Darkness thinned by degrees, turning from deep shadow into a faint grey, as if the house was slowly taking a deep breath after hours of quiet rest. Waking didn't come with noise or alarms. It arrived softly, carried by cooler air, distant sounds outside, or the gradual brightening allowed by Allah as the sun began its rise. Most people woke slowly, not in sudden bursts. A stretch beneath blankets, a soft rustle of cloth, the shifting of someone turning to sit up. These small movements layered over each other until the room felt lightly alive again. The home welcomed this transition without haste, letting each person return to wakefulness at their own steady pace. The embers in the hearth, now dull and cool, marked the new task of the day. Someone would kneel beside them, stirring them gently or rebuilding the fire from fresh wood. The first sparks of warmth returned to the room, signaling the beginning of familiar routines. This act, done every morning, felt like greeting an old friend, the quiet heart of the home coming back to life by Allah's permission. A gentle reminder for you here: you do not need to visualize everything clearly. Let the feeling of a home waking slowly, calm, dim, and familiar be enough. If your thoughts drift, you can drift with them. This story is here to soothe, not to demand focus. The smells of the morning began to mix with the air, a new day's meal simmering, freshly stirred straw giving off a faint earthy scent, the coolness from outside lingering near the door. These scents created a gentle invitation, pulling each person gently into the day ahead. Light entered the home much the same way it left the night before, softly, respectfully. Thin beams slipped through tiny window openings, illuminating only parts of the room at first. The world inside warmed slowly, as though the house itself was waking in stages. Nothing rushed. Nothing demanded attention. Life was beginning again, but still within the quiet boundaries set by Allah's natural rhythms. Furniture, now visible again in soft morning light, felt different too. What had been shadows at night became clear shapes once more, the table waiting for its first task, the stool ready to be used, the tools resting in their places. Everything seemed patient, as if the home itself understood there was no need to hurry. A sense of gratitude often accompanied these mornings. Gratitude for shelter, warmth, food, and family. Not spoken loudly, but felt quietly in the way people moved with purpose, tended to each other, and began their tasks with steady hearts. This unspoken gratitude connected the household, reminding them of Allah's mercy in even the simplest blessings. Another soft anchor. As you listen, let your own breathing stay slow. You don't need to engage deeply. Just let the mood of this gradual morning help your thoughts soften, like the gentle light returning to the medieval room. Even as people began their day's work, the overall feeling of the home remained grounded. Activity returned, but the quietness never truly vanished. The walls still held the memory of the night's rest, and the air still carried the calm that had settled while everyone slept. This lingering softness helped keep the home peaceful even during busier hours. The medieval home wasn't perfect. It could be cold, smoky, cramped, or dim, but it offered something deeper than luxury, a steady sense of belonging. Each corner, each object, each routine reminded the family that this was their place of safety and gathering, built with effort, held together by care, and protected by Allah's kindness. In that sense, comfort in the home wasn't only physical. It was emotional, spiritual, and shared. The home shaped the people, and the people shaped the home. Day after day, night after night, a mutual relationship formed, one that wrapped every person in familiarity, routine, and a quiet form of love. As the day fully broke and the home shifted back into activity, the peacefulness of the night did not disappear. It settled beneath everything, like a soft foundation supporting the hours ahead. The calm of the night lingered in the slow pace of movement, the warmth of the fire, and the gentle understanding that life did not need to be hurried to be meaningful. And just as the medieval home moved through its quiet cycles, you too can let your thoughts ease into a slower rhythm. Let the feeling of this place, its warmth, its quiet, its simple comforts, settle in your mind like a soft blanket. Thank you for spending this time exploring the gentle world of a medieval home. Your presence here is appreciated, and I am grateful you listened to this calm story. May you find rest, warmth, and peace in your own night, if Allah wills.